So to those of you who have just joined us and those who are watching on YouTube, thank you so much. We hope that you find this workshop useful. This is a presentation on Term 3's math literacy content. So we're going to start with finance and work our way through the year. What I've done is underneath each heading, I'll tell you exactly which grades are covering the topic. So for finance, it's just grade 10 and 11, and we'll go from there. So some very important theory that we need to know for math literacy is firstly income, which is money coming in. I mean, it's from the way that the word is structured, it's pretty important. As I was saying the other day in our grade 7 to 9 content, we were talking about vocabulary in maths and how if a student doesn't understand a word, they can often miss an entire concept. So this theory of this talking about what each thing means is actually really important for students. And we were saying you can create your own maths dictionary, just a little A4, A3 notebook with the words in it. You can have one page for A's and B's and whatever. And then as you go through a topic, your students can write down words that they need to know. So for example, if we were talking about finance, we would be talking about income and expenditure. We'd be talking about fixed costs and variable costs. And what a budget actually is. And I think this skill of budgeting is actually should be taught across all the grades and across all maths and math literacy, but they don't cover it in maths, which is quite sad. But the skill of being able to use a budget and plan for a budget is actually really critical for when you grow up. So in fact, I still haven't mastered it myself. So fixed assets or fixed costs are the same amount every month, and they usually go off at the same time every month as well. Then your variable costs or your variable income would be money or costs that are not always the same amount every month, like groceries won't always be a precise amount because things change and things are on special or things are not on special. You need one thing this month and something else a different month. Or electricity is also variable cost. But a fixed cost could be your rent. You're always going to pay the same amount of rent every month. Okay, then interest, you need to be able to calculate simple and compound interest manually. So I'll show you how to do that on the calculator in a sec. Then the difference between simple and compound interest. Simple interest, you are adding the same amount of your initial value every time. So if we are adding 5% of 1,000 Rand, it's 50 Rand. So we're adding 50 Rand every time, every year onto that amount. Okay. Whereas compound interest, you're adding the same percentage to the previous amount every time. Okay. So you're taking a percentage of the previous amount and adding it to that amount to get your new total. Whereas with simple interest, you're taking the initial value or the initial interest of the value, the initial percentage of that, you're taking the percentage of the initial value every time. You're not taking a new percentage, or a percentage of a new amount every time. That would be compound interest. Wow, how to fluff things up. Okay, so calculating simple interest manually, I just want to show you how to do this. It's very, very nice and easy. So I'm just going to share my calculator with you. So let's say your initial amount is 1,500 Rand and you are adding simple interest and it is 7%. So what we can do is we can just find out what 7% is of 1,500 Rand. So we're just going to say, well, of we know is times. So it's 7. And then we say second function and 1. And the calculator automatically notes that the percentage button is an equal sign as well, and that's why we don't have to press equal. So we get 7% of 1,500 Rand is 105 Rand. So then what we do is we say 1,500 plus, and we can just say, actually let's not do it that way, 105, and it gives us 1,605 Rand. Then what we do is we just say plus 105 for the next year. And so in year 2, we've got 1,710 Rand. And then we can just keep pressing our equals button and it will just continue like that. So we can see over a time period of so many years, obviously we'd have to go back and count how many to do on this method. Okay, but this is the way that they expect you to be able to answer it in an exam. They don't want you to use the formula, so they want you to be able to do this. I'll show you another method in the table mode as well, which will help. It's a little bit quicker and you can see the number of years. But this is the actual method that they want to see in your exam. Okay, then for compound interest, so what you're going to do is we have 1,500 Rand and we want to add 7%, right? So we're going to just say 7% of 1,500. So we're just going to do that, and then it will give us this. Then what you do is you just say plus 7% again, and then plus 7% again. And this will be your compound interest answers. Now, if you want the decimal answer, you just press change to get your decimal answers there. Okay, so remember not to press the equals button, otherwise it's going to mess up your calculation. It's just plus 7%. Okay, and then you can go through and count them. If you want a shorter way to add the percent button, so you don't want to say second function 1, you can actually store the percentage function into a D1 key. So these are just keys that are there for you to save your favorite functions into. So we can say second function and 1, and now we can say plus 7 D1, and we've got the same thing. Okay, so that's all of your compound interest. Now we can do it using table mode. So we'll have, in the first one, we have 1,500 Rand. The problem with this is that you have to use the formula, right? So I'm going to say 7% over 100. You can use the percentage as well. And this is my simple interest formula. Close my brackets, say equals. And here I'm going to use my compound interest just to save time. 1 plus, and I'm going to do it 0.07, same thing. I'm just showing you the difference between the two mechanisms of writing them. And here I'm going to put in an X as well. So to put in an X, you make the RCL button, press the RCL button twice. Okay, so the first one we've got simple interest. The second one we've got a compound interest, both with initial values of 1,500 Rand and both with an interest rate of 7%. Leave your start at 0 and your step 1. And we just say equals, and here we go. So you can see the first year, of course, they're both going to get 105 Rand. Okay, but after the second year, you can see you've added an extra 7 Rand to your compound interest versus your simple interest. And here we can see we've got an extra 22 Rand 56 cents, and so on. So you can see your compound interest grows a lot faster than your simple interest. And you can see here in the table, this column with the X is your number of years going through. Okay. So that's simple and compound interest and calculating it manually. And then, of course, we also want to talk about VAT. So I just want to go briefly through that. So we're going to go back to our home button, which is normal mode. Let's say, for example, we have our initial price value is 205 Rand, and we want to add 15% VAT. Okay, so we say plus 15, second function, and 1. Oh, I could have actually just done my D1 key. And then, of course, we can press change. So our new price is 235 Rand and 75 cents. Now, let's say, for example, we know that the price tag in the shop is 299 Rand, and we want to work out what it would have cost us before that. So what we do is we divide it by 115%. So I'm just using my shortcut key there, D1, which we saved just now. And that gives us 260 Rand. So before we added that, it was 260 Rand. And we can check that we are correct by saying 260 plus 15%, and we can see that we have the right value. So there we go. So with UIF, specifically, they've just updated it. So you have you pay 1% of your salary up to a total salary of 17,712 Rand, and your employer also contributes 1%. So if you have a salary of more than 17,712 Rand, you're only going to pay 1% of that total amount. Okay, very easy to find your 1%, which I've just done here. You can see in the pictures. So I'm not going to go back to my calculator for this. So the maximum amount you can pay in UIF is 177 Rand and 12 cents. Okay, so the next topic is measurement with grade 10. And what they need to know is perimeter and area. And specifically in grade 10, they focus on 2D shapes. So a long time ago, I was chatting to a teacher who told me that they teach area and perimeter using the dead body exercise. And I love it. I think it's absolutely brilliant. So I'm sharing it with you. So the dead body is simply where you have one of your students lie down on the floor and you draw a chalk outline of the dead body. I'm saying this in inverted commas, okay? Then once the student stands up, you can see the outline of the body, that chalk, is the perimeter, okay? And the inside of the chalk, that lining where your, where your blood would be, inverted commas, or the space where the body was lying, that is your area. Okay, then you need to know the perimeter and area, obviously, for rectangles, triangles, and circles, and you must make sure that the formulae are given. Now, here's a link to, as I mentioned earlier, that basic worksheet practice with area and perimeter. And what's really nice here is you can set how difficult you want to do it. Do you want to do compound shapes? Do you want to just do simple shapes? Do you want to change the measurements? And each worksheet has about 6 questions on it, and the following paper or the following page is the answer. So it's a really nice setup for worksheets. Then you've got maps, plans, and representations, and all 3 grades cover this topic. Okay, so So what you need to know is floor plans and designs, and you can design your own. So this link here allows you to create your own floor plan, which I thought was awesome. You know, we talk about floor plans and designs and we give them this grainy photo and we expect them to be able to just, you know, go from there. But if you do have access, even on a smartphone or to a computer lab, get them to go and look and to create a floor plan of their own. And you can see this link is actually for a school activity as well. Then they also need to be able to draw models and to deal with 3D models. So we're talking about a cereal box or a container and so on. So this link here to various nets gives you all the different shapes for cubes, for cones, for rectangles, all of those things. So you can just click on there and then just pick and select whichever net you want to do. So I thought it would be such a fun project to do, is to build a class town. So each class, each person in the class gets assigned a particular building, whether it's the hospital or the church or the shopping center or an office block or houses. I mean, you really can go mad. So each child will pull a piece of paper out of a hat and they will have to build a house to a particular scale, okay, or a hospital or whatever. And then once they're all complete, they can put their town together on a big piece of cardboard and draw streets and whatever else. Just a nice collaborative project, but obviously they all get marked on their own particular model. Then scales are not the ones that make you cry. Sorry, I'm terribly lame. We're talking about number scales. So from 1 centimeter to 500 centimeters in real life, or we would have 1 centimeter to half a kilometer. 500 centimeters. No, a meter is 100 centimeters. Yeah, so it would be 15 meters. Yes, 5 meters. So on those scales and so on. Okay, so this would actually be 1 to 500 meters, probably just half a kilometer. Then of course you get those bar scales, and we're talking about the little rectangle blocks with one half colored in black and one half colored in white, and a similar number printed on there as well. Okay, and then I have linked to Maths at Sharp with the worksheets there on the topic of maps, plans, and representations. Then with scale, it's basically a ratio calculation. So they need to understand the basics of ratio. So if your scale is 1 centimeter to 2 kilometers and you measure 6 centimeters on the map, so you're going from the small one to the big one, so we multiply. So it's going to be 6 times 2 will give me 12. If your park, are we using the same scale? If your park measures 3 kilometers by 4 kilometers, we're going backwards. So we're going to divide. So it would be 3 divided by 2 to give us 1.5 centimeters and 4 divided by 2 to give us 2 centimeters on the actual map. All right. Then we have, sorry, are there any questions? Are we all good so far? Okay, fantastic. So we're going to look at tariff systems, and this is particularly just for grade 11. So what I've done is, if you are a teacher, I've linked to our Sharpies maths page for grade 11. There's a math literacy and finance investigation here, but you need to be a member of Sharpies in order to get it. So just Sharpies is obviously free. It's that reward teacher program that we have. So just sign up for Sharpies first, and then you'll have access to that investigation. And then, of course, there are worksheets on Maths at Sharp as well for the tariff systems. So the things that we need to pay attention to for tariffs, municipal tariffs, by this they mean your rates and taxes, your electricity, then your telephone tariffs, your transport. So it costs me R5 per kilometer to travel with taxi or whatever, and then of course your bank fees, and being able to do both calculations and drawing graphs with these. So I put in an example because I think it's quite a this actually comes from a worksheet, sorry, that we've created. So Jack and Jill are best friends and their birthdays are 1 day apart, so they decide to host their 18th birthday party together. They get 2 quotes for the catering for the party, and they want to compare the quotes to decide which option is more cost effective. So this one is 135 Rand per head for catering, which includes the cost of the venue, but excludes VAT. Then the second option is 6,000 Rand for the venue hire and 90 Rand per head, but it includes VAT. So those 2 are very important. And as we discussed VAT before, we should be able to cut this calculation here. So the first question is, calculate the total cost of each option, assuming they invite 120 guests to the party. And then based on the calculations, which catering option should Jack and Jill choose? So let's start with option 1. So basically we need to say 135 Rand times 120 and then plus VAT. So we're going to just do that on our calculator quickly. So we're going to have 135 Rand times 120 people is equal to 16,200. And then we need to add VAT. So we're going to say plus 15, and I'm just going to use my shortcut key again, E1. So my total cost for option 1 is 18,600 and, oh, sorry. Let me just, sorry, this is terrible. My paper's too smooth here. Yeah. Okay, then for our second option, we're going to have 6,000 Rand venue hire plus 120 guests that cost 90 Rand each. So that total is 16,800 Rand. I'm pulling this in here. Okay, so that's option 2. So obviously our best option is option 2. It's almost 2,000 Rand cheaper for their catering. Okay, so let's go back and look at the next question. So question B. So just keep these in mind, because as soon as I change my sharing, my page is going to go. So option 1 was 18,620 and option 2 was 16,800. Okay, so let's go back to question and say Jack and Jill choose option 2, and then they decide to invite another 40 people to their party. The catering company has said that they will offer a 15% discount on the total cost of the party if the total exceeds 18,500 Rand. Do they qualify for this discount? And if so, what is the total amount that they pay for the party? Okay, so firstly, we need to add another 40 people at 90 Rand. So we're just going to add 40 times 90, and we get a total of 20,400, right? Then because it's over 18,500 Rand, we can get a 15% discount. So we're going to say minus 15%. I'm just going to use my shortcut key, and it gives us the cost of 17,340 Rand. And that is the answer to our question. So the total amount that they will pay is 17,340 Rand. I think that's what it said. Okay. All right, fantastic. Any questions so far? All good. Awesome. Okay. Then the next section is probability. And I feel like the probability gets a bad rap, but it's actually a really nice topic. So it's for grade 11 and 12, and there are worksheets for you on probability. Okay, so again, you need to know your theory words. So just to briefly go through them, because I think sometimes we struggle with this. The outcome is the result of a single experiment or event, okay? Whereas the event is the actual experiment or the thing that we are observing, okay? So your event is what would the weather be tomorrow? Your outcome would be sunshiny or rain or whatever, okay? Then your probability scale is the measure of how likely an event will occur or what chance it's going to occur. And we use a probability scale between 0 and 1. So 0 would be absolutely no chance of something happening, and 1 would be it's definitely going to happen and it cannot be stopped. Okay. So you can either use 0 to 1, we use it in decimals, or you can use it as a percentage. So 100% chance is it's definitely going to happen. Okay. So you just need to be able to say, okay, so halfway between those two at 50%, it's equally likely to occur. 25% chance means maybe, but it's more likely not to occur than it is to occur. Whereas 75%, it's more likely to occur than it is not to occur. Okay, so just remember that scale. And then relative frequency is how many times a specific result occurs in an experiment divided by the total number of experiments. So this is real life. Okay, so when we talk about throwing a dice and we count how many times, so we throw the dice 10 times and we land on a 6 3 times. That means we threw 3 out of 10 sixes. Okay, that is your relative frequency. Your theoretical probability is we use the information we have about a dice, which is there are 6 different outcomes on the dice. So we expect that if the dice is not loaded, if it's got a fair dice, then you would expect that the 6 would show up 1 in 6 times and the 5 would show up 1 in 5 times. That is a theoretical probability. It's what we expect the outcome to be based on what we know about the dice. Okay, so obviously the more times you do an experiment, the closer your relative frequency gets to your theoretical probability. Okay, then we also have dependent and independent events. Okay, so an independent event means that the result of one event has no effect on the next event's result. Okay, whereas a dependent event, if the result of one event does affect the result of the next event afterwards. Okay, so if we think about drawing marbles from a bag or from a bottle, if you take a marble out and then you put it back, that is an independent event because you haven't changed the probability landscape within that bag, right? But if you take a marble out and you keep it, then you've changed how many different options are in your bag, and that becomes dependent on what you did before. Okay, in other words, you took a marble out, now there are only 9 marbles instead of 10 marbles. So your probability of a blue marble is now 5 out of 9 instead of 5 out of 10, if that makes sense. Okay, so there are some really nice things you can do with your calculator. We actually have a random function on the calculator, and it's lovely for playing with probability. So to get your random function, obviously you're in normal mode, and you're just going to press second function and 7. Okay, then you have 4 different options. So random does random decimals between 0 and 1, so 3 decimal places. So you can use this really nice for the beginning of grade 10 when you want to practice rounding off skills. Get them to just press the random button and round off to 2 decimal places and 1 decimal place. Then your dice, exactly like a dice, so it has the numbers 1 to 6 that show up randomly. Your random coin is a math coin. So instead of saying heads and tails, it's going to say 0s and 1s. And then, of course, random integer is any two numbers. So you can choose the perimeter or the parameters of your random numbers. Okay, so let's say, for example, you want to play with the dice. So we're doing a relative frequency experiment to see how many times we have to throw the dice before our theoretical probability starts to show up. So all you do is choose one for dice and press equals, and then you just keep pressing equals, and we can count how many times each one shows up. Now, if you are a teacher and you're doing this in class with your students, you can also create a tally table with them, and then you say, okay, who rolled a 1? And everyone who rolled a 1 sticks up their hands, and then you write down 5 kids got 1 and 2 kids got 2, and then you do it a couple of times, and you look at the relative frequency versus the expected or the theoretical probability of this. The other nice one is to play the lottery with your students. So to do that, we press second function 7, and we choose number 3 for random integer. Okay, now the lottery is any numbers between 1 and 52. So we press 1, we press the X, Y button, we press 52. Okay, and then we ask our students to choose random numbers between 1 and 52. They need to choose 6 of them. Write them down on a piece of paper. Once they're done, they switch the piece of paper with a student sitting next to them or their friend. And then you roll, or you start drawing numbers. So we press equals, and our first number is 42. Now, if any of the students had 42 on their pages, the friend will circle 42 for them, and then we'll move on to the next number. Okay, then we do this 6 times, and at the end, we see if anyone got all 6 numbers correct. Obviously, this is highly unlikely to happen because your chances of getting this right is 1 in, I think it's 100 billion or 100 million, 1 billion. Anyway, it's very low. So you should be able to get away with it as well. Oh, here we go. So those are the suggestions that I'll work through right now. Then the other thing that you need to work on is a two-way contingency table. So a two-way contingency table basically is a way to represent 2 or more categorical variables. So it's not numerical, it's categories like men, woman, blue, red, green, Honda, Toyota, oh, I don't know cars, Chevrolet. And then they must be mutually exclusive. So you cannot have a Honda that is a Toyota, or you cannot have a man that is a woman, although some people would beg to disagree. But you cannot have a person who got more than 50% and less than 50%. Okay, so those are the category or two-way contingency tables. And basically what it does is it allows you to work out the probability of selecting one person in a particular group. So if you want to say, okay, what is the chance of selecting a man out of the entire group? Well, then it's the total number of men, which is 195, out of the total number of people, which is 500. Okay, or a woman would be 305 out of 500. And the chance of choosing someone who got more than 50% is 325. Whereas out of 500, or the people who got less than 50 would be 175 people out of 500. Okay, now you can combine those. So you can say, what is the chance of getting a man who got more than 50%? Well, it's 99 out of 500. Okay, so that's how it works. All right, fantastic. Guys, thank you so much for your time. Are there any questions, any thoughts? Remember, you can, while you're putting your questions in there, I'm just going to talk a little bit. You can download your worksheets and your simulator. So that calculator that I was using through the presentation, you can download from MathShop. It is free to download, as well as all of the worksheets there as well. If you are on YouTube, thank you so much for joining us, and please do subscribe so that you can catch up with any other videos.